My name is Silas Orrin, and I fix things for a living. Engines mostly, though lately I've been wondering if marriages fall into that category. 23 years running Orrin's auto shop in this Rust Belt town along the Hudson, and I can diagnose a blown gasket from 50 yards away. What I couldn't diagnose was my wife's sudden interest in working late. The text came at 8:47 p.m. on our anniversary while I sat at the kitchen table with a bottle of Dom Perignon that cost me 2 days' profit. Mara had canceled dinner 3 hours earlier, another client emergency, she'd said. Her law practice had been demanding lately, or so she claimed. The message was from Cedric Fallon. "She's here, not with you. Table 12. Sorry, man." Cedric had been our waiter at Riverside Bistro for 7 years running. Every anniversary, same table, same champagne, same ritual. He'd served us through promotions and arguments, through my father's funeral and Emery's graduation. He knew our order before we sat down. My phone buzzed again. A photo of the reservation book appeared on my screen. Mara Solin's name in neat cursive. Party of 2. Special request, anniversary dessert with candles. I stared at that image until the screen went dark, then lit it again. The handwriting was definitely hers, the careful loops she'd perfected in law school, the ones that impressed judges and juries. Below her name, in Cedric's hurried scrawl, "Ordered the Dom. Same bottle you always get." The champagne in front of me suddenly felt like evidence. I'd known Cedric since college, back when we shared a cramped apartment and dreams bigger than this town could hold. He'd stayed to run his family's restaurant supply business before taking the server job at Riverside. I'd stayed to inherit my father's garage. We were the guys who remained while everyone else escaped to Albany or New York City, which made his betrayal of professional discretion mean something. My hands were steady as I opened our phone account online. Verizon's website loaded with the efficiency of a company that profits from marital surveillance. I scrolled through Mara's call logs, looking for patterns I'd been too trusting to notice. There it was, a number that appeared 847 times over 19 months. Calls during my business trips to Syracuse, texts during my morning commute, a relationship mapped onto every absence, every moment when I wasn't watching. The reverse lookup took 30 seconds. Damon Vossel, local realtor, recently divorced. The kind of guy who wore Italian suits to sell suburban colonials and drove a BMW with vanity plates reading "Sold It." I knew exactly how they'd met. My brother Grant had organized a company retreat last spring at some resort in the Catskills. Mara's law firm had been invited to discuss zoning regulations. Grant worked in commercial development, the kind of job that required networking and handshakes and introducing attractive lawyers to successful realtors. I found Grant's email from that weekend in my archived messages. Mara seemed to enjoy herself. She deserves someone who appreciates her ambition. You're always so focused on that garage. At the time, I'd thought he was being supportive. Now I recognized it as reconnaissance. The joint savings account told the rest of the story. Withdrawals totaling $67,000 over 2 years. Cash pulled during my out-of-town jobs. Money that had supposedly gone to Mara's continuing education courses and professional conferences. I cross-referenced the dates with her calendar. Every withdrawal coincided with a weekend when she'd claimed to be attending seminars in Portland or Boston, cities with good restaurants and boutique hotels and no paper trail back to our marriage. My phone rang, Mara's ringtone, Pachelbel's Canon, the song from our wedding. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, and her voice carried that particular breathiness that meant wine and candlelight and someone else's attention. "I'm so sorry about tonight. This merger is consuming everything. I'll make it up to you this weekend." In the background, I heard the soft clink of silverware on china, the low murmur of Riverside Bistro's dinner crowd, the sound of my wife lying to me from our anniversary table. "No problem," I said. "I understand completely. You're the best. I love you." The line disconnected. 3 words that had once meant everything, delivered like a business courtesy. I sat in our kitchen, surrounded by the artifacts of a 24-year marriage, wedding photos on the refrigerator, Emery's honor roll certificates, a ceramic bowl Mara had made in a pottery class, back when she'd had hobbies instead of affairs. The champagne remained unopened. Evidence, I reminded myself. Everything was evidence now. My laptop was still open to our financial records. I scrolled deeper, looking for patterns. A credit card I'd never seen before appeared on Mara's credit report. Billing address in Portland. Recent charges at furniture stores and electronics retailers. The private investigator cost me $500 up front. Janet Morrison had handled 3 divorces for guys at the shop, and her reputation for thoroughness was legendary. She promised preliminary results within 48 hours. I need documentation, I told her. Photographs, receipts, anything that holds up in court. How long have you suspected? About 4 hours. She laughed, but not unkindly. You'd be surprised how often I hear that. The signs are always there. People just don't want to see them. Janet was right. The signs had been everywhere. Mara's sudden interest in fitness, new lingerie that never appeared in our bedroom, phone calls she took in the garage, thinking the noise would cover her voice, business trips that stretched from weekends to entire weeks, a social calendar that no longer included me. She's creating distance, Janet explained, making the separation feel natural when it happens. It's textbook. What about the money? Asset protection. She's been preparing for this longer than you think. I hung up, feeling like I'd been diagnosed with a terminal illness. Everything familiar suddenly seemed foreign. Our house felt like a stage set, our marriage like a performance I'd been giving alone. Mara returned home at 11:23 p.m. I heard her car in the driveway, the slam of the door, the click of heels on our front walk. She moved through the house with the confidence of someone who believed her secrets were safe. I was waiting in the kitchen. Same table, same champagne, same position I'd held for 3 hours. You're still up, she said, and I caught the faint scent of anniversary champagne on her breath. Couldn't sleep. How was your meeting? Exhausting. These merger documents are incredibly complex. She kicked off her heels, a gesture I'd once found endearing. I'm sorry about dinner. I know how much you were looking forward to it. There's always next year. She kissed my forehead, a wife's benediction delivered with practiced ease. You're so understanding. I don't deserve you. For the first time all evening, she'd told the truth. After she went upstairs, I remained at the kitchen table. The champagne stood between us like an accusation, its gold foil catching the overhead light. I thought about opening it, about toasting the end of my marriage with the bottle that had celebrated its beginning. Instead, I left it sealed. Evidence, I reminded myself. Everything was evidence now. The next morning arrived with the cruel normalcy of routine. Mara made coffee and toast, checked her phone 17 times during breakfast, and kissed me goodbye with lips that had tasted another man's champagne 12 hours earlier. Working late again tonight, she said, adjusting her jacket in the hallway mirror. This merger won't close itself. I watched her leave from the kitchen window. Her BMW disappeared around the corner, heading toward downtown and whatever lie she'd constructed for today. The house felt different in her absence, not peaceful but hollow, like a shell with its animal removed. At the shop, I tried to focus on the usual parade of broken transmissions and failed inspections. My hands moved automatically through familiar motions, while my mind processed the previous night's revelations. By noon, I'd diagnosed 3 engine problems and mentally cataloged 2 years of marital deception. My phone buzzed with a text from Cedric. Can we talk? I have more information. We met at Murphy's Diner, a place that served coffee strong enough to strip paint and minded its own business about private conversations. Cedric looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his napkin like a man about to confess. I've been serving them for 8 months, he said without preamble. Always table 12. Always the same champagne. She tips well and calls him darling when she thinks nobody's listening. How often? Twice a week, sometimes 3 times, Tuesday nights, Thursday afternoons, Sunday brunch when you're at the shop doing inventory. The precision of it impressed me. My wife had scheduled her affair around my work routine with the efficiency she brought to legal briefs. There's more, Cedric continued. Last month she brought in photos, house listings, I think. They spent 2 hours looking at papers and making phone calls. What kind of houses? Expensive ones. I saw the price tags when I cleared their table. Nothing under $500,000. Our house was worth maybe $180,000 on a good day. Whatever they were planning required a significant upgrade in lifestyle. I thanked Cedric and drove home to continue my investigation. The house felt like a crime scene now, every room containing potential evidence. I started in Mara's office, a converted bedroom where she kept client files and law journals. Her computer was password protected, but I knew her patterns. She used variations of Emery's birthday combined with our anniversary date. The third attempt granted access to 24 years of shared digital life. Her email revealed the architecture of betrayal. Messages to Damon stretched back 19 months, beginning with professional courtesy and evolving into something that made my stomach clench. I read them chronologically, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. The early emails were cautious. Thank you for the referral information. Perhaps we could discuss this over coffee? By month 3, they'd progressed to dinner plans and inside jokes. By month 6, the language had shifted to something unmistakably intimate. I can't stop thinking about yesterday afternoon. Grant was right about you. Grant. My brother's name appeared throughout their correspondence like a recurring motif. He'd introduced them, provided opportunities for private meetings, and actively encouraged their relationship. His betrayal cut deeper than Mara's because I'd never seen it coming. The most recent emails discussed logistics, meeting times, hotel reservations, and financial arrangements for something called the Portland Project. Mara had been planning our divorce before I'd suspected our marriage was in trouble. I printed everything. 17 pages of evidence that transformed my wife from partner to adversary. The afternoon brought Janet Morrison's preliminary report. She'd worked fast, leveraging contacts and public records to construct a comprehensive picture of Mara's double life. The Portland apartment is real, she said, spreading photographs across my kitchen table. 2-bedroom condo in the Pearl District, lease signed 18 months ago, both their names on the mailbox. The photos showed a space I'd never seen but somehow recognized. Mara's taste in furniture, her preference for modern art and neutral colors, a life she'd built without me, furnished with money we'd earned together. The financial picture is complicated, Janet continued. She's been moving assets for over a year. The law firm has a retirement account I doubt you know about. There's also a trust fund from her parents that she's never mentioned. How much? Combined? Probably close to $400,000 that won't be part of any divorce settlement. I studied the photographs, looking for details that might explain how I'd missed something this elaborate. In one image, I spotted a familiar coffee mug, one I'd bought Mara for her birthday 3 years ago. She'd been furnishing her secret life with artifacts from our marriage. What about him? Damon Vossel. Divorced last year, messy settlement. His ex-wife got the house and most of his assets. He's been rebuilding with help from successful friends. Janet's emphasis on successful friends wasn't subtle. You think he's after her money? I think he's after stability. Your wife represents security and social standing. Plus, she's financing his recovery from his own divorce. The irony was perfect. Mara was funding her lover's rehabilitation from his previous marriage, while systematically dismantling ours. That evening, I sat in my garage and planned my response. The space felt appropriate for strategic thinking, surrounded by tools and spare parts, the machinery of repair and reconstruction. But some things couldn't be fixed, only replaced. I'd spent 24 years being the understanding husband, the guy who worked late so Mara could pursue her career, the man who attended her firm's parties and smiled through conversations about cases and clients I'd never understand. That version of myself had been useful to her. Stable, predictable, and apparently disposable. The new version would be different. I started with the joint accounts. Our savings, checking, and investment portfolios were legally accessible to both parties until divorce proceedings began. I transferred everything into accounts bearing only my name, leaving enough in the joint holdings to avoid immediate suspicion. Next, I canceled Emery's tuition payments for the spring semester. Our daughter was a sophomore at Albany, studying communications and posting social media content that routinely mocked her boring father. If Mara wanted to play house with Damon, she could fund our daughter's education with her hidden assets. The credit cards came next. I reported Mara's supplemental cards as stolen, freezing her access to our shared credit lines. Her secret card would still function, but her ability to spend our money would end immediately. By midnight, I'd restructured our entire financial relationship. Mara would wake up tomorrow to discover that her comfortable life had become significantly more complicated. I should have felt guilty about the deception, but guilt required trust, and trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: control. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." I stared at the message, wondering who'd sent it and how they'd gotten my number. The threat was vague but unmistakably serious. Someone was watching my investigation. I forwarded the text to Janet Morrison with a note. "Looks like we're making progress." Her response came immediately. "Good. That means we're close to something important." I turned off my phone and sat in the darkness of my garage, surrounded by the familiar smells of motor oil and metal shavings. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, fresh betrayals, and deeper complications. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Mara discovered the financial changes over her morning coffee. I watched from the kitchen doorway as she tried her credit card 3 times at the grocery store, each attempt generating the same result: declined. Her phone call to the bank was a masterpiece of controlled panic. Professional voice, reasonable questions, growing frustration as the customer service representative explained that the primary account holder had restructured their joint holdings. "There must be some mistake," she said, but her eyes found mine across the kitchen, and I saw the moment she understood. "No mistake," I said after she hung up. "Just a reallocation of resources." "Silas, what are you doing?" "Learning to play chess instead of checkers." She set down her coffee cup with the careful precision of someone trying not to break things. "We need to talk." "We do. But not here and not now. I have a business to run." The shop provided sanctuary from domestic warfare. I buried myself in routine maintenance and complex repairs, letting the familiar rhythms of mechanical work calm my racing thoughts. But concentration proved elusive when every customer seemed to carry news of my crumbling marriage. "Heard Mara's been spending time with that realtor," said Pete Kowalski, whose transmission I was rebuilding. "My wife saw them at lunch yesterday. Looked pretty cozy." "People talk," I replied, not looking up from my work. "They do. Usually means something when they talk this much." By noon, 3 more customers had offered similar observations. Our small town's gossip network had been tracking my wife's affair with the efficiency of a surveillance system. Everyone knew except the husband as usual. Cedric called during my lunch break. "They're here again. Same table, but something's different. She looks upset." "How upset?" "Crying in her champagne upset. Want me to listen?" "If you can do it safely." 20 minutes later, he texted back, "She's worried about money. Mentioned lawyers and private investigators. He's trying to calm her down." So Mara had figured out she was being watched. Good. Let her feel what uncertainty tasted like. I spent the afternoon researching divorce attorneys. My requirements were specific: someone with experience in complex financial cases, a reputation for aggressive representation, and no prior relationship with Mara's firm. I found my lawyer in Catherine Walsh, a former prosecutor who'd built a practice around high-conflict divorces. Her online reviews read like testimonials from satisfied generals. She fights like hell. And Catherine doesn't just win cases, she destroys the opposition. Our consultation was scheduled for Friday morning. That evening, Mara attempted reconciliation. She cooked my favorite dinner, pot roast with vegetables, the recipe she'd learned from my mother. The table was set with our good china, candles flickering between us like a peace offering. "I know you're angry," she began, cutting her meat with surgical precision. The financial changes were extreme. Were they? We're married, Silas, partners. We should discuss major decisions together. The irony was so perfect I almost laughed. "Like you discussed Portland with me?" Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What?" "The apartment, the furniture, the mailbox with both your names on it." She set down her utensil and folded her hands in her lap. When she looked at me, her expression had shifted from conciliatory to calculating. I was seeing the lawyer now, not the wife. "How long have you known?" "Long enough. The question is, how long you've been planning this." "Planning what?" "The divorce, the asset transfer, the new life you've been building while I fixed carburetors and paid mortgages." She was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like a judge evaluating testimony. "You're not who I thought you were." "Neither are you." "I mean it, Silas. This coldness, this calculation. It's not the man I married." "The man you married was useful. Stable income, predictable schedule, no questions asked when you worked late or traveled for business. But useful isn't the same as loved, is it?" "I did love you." Past tense. "I noticed." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "I won't be treated like a criminal in my own home." "Your home? Interesting choice of words. What's that supposed to mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs Janet had provided. The Portland apartment, the furniture, the mailbox. Evidence of a life I'd never been invited to share. "It means you've had 2 homes for over a year. This one was just for convenience." Her composure finally cracked. "You hired a private investigator?" "I hired several things. Investigators, lawyers, accountants. Amazing what you can accomplish when you stop trusting people." "Silas, listen to me." "No." I stood, matching her height and intensity. "I'm done listening, done understanding, done being the patient husband while you audition my replacement. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You've been planning our divorce since before you filed for it. Moving money, establishing residency, building a case for why you deserve more than half of everything we built together." She moved toward the door, but I wasn't finished. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to receive divorce papers. They'll be comprehensive, detailed, and based on extensive documentation of your affair and financial misconduct. You can't prove—" "I can prove everything. 19 months of phone records, hotel receipts, credit card statements, email correspondence, photographs of you and Damon at restaurants, apartments, and real estate offices." Her face had gone pale, but she maintained eye contact. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand that the game has changed. You're not playing against the mechanic anymore. You're playing against someone who's learned your rules." "And then what?" "Then we see who's better at chess." She left the room without another word. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, the slam of our bedroom door, the muffled sound of phone conversation through the walls. I cleared the dinner table, washing dishes and storing leftovers with methodical care. The pot roast had been excellent, probably the best meal she'd cooked in months. It seemed appropriate that our last dinner together had been memorable. My phone rang at 9:30. Grant's number appeared on the screen. "We need to talk," he said without preamble. "About what?" "About how you're handling this situation. Mara called me. She's upset." She should be. Silas, she's family. We can work this out without lawyers and private investigators. She stopped being family when she started planning my replacement. You stopped being family when you helped her do it. Silence stretched between us, filled with 20 years of brotherhood dissolving in real time. I was trying to help, he finally said. You were trying to help her. There's a difference. She deserves happiness. So do I. Funny how that never came up in your calculations. I hung up before he could respond. Another relationship severed, another connection dissolved. The process was becoming easier with practice. At midnight, I sat in my garage and reviewed the day's progress. Mara's financial access was restricted. Her secret life was documented. Her support network was crumbling. But something felt incomplete. The anonymous threat from the previous night suggested complications I hadn't anticipated. Someone was protecting Mara's interests, someone with resources and motivation beyond simple friendship. I made a mental note to discuss security concerns with Catherine Walsh. If Mara's allies were willing to make threats, they might be willing to escalate beyond intimidation. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Morrison. Found something interesting about the Portland apartment. Call me tomorrow. I turned off the lights and locked the garage. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, fresh complications, and deeper betrayals. But tonight, I'd won the first battle in a war I was finally ready to fight. Catherine Walsh's office occupied the 15th floor of Albany's newest high-rise, with windows that offered commanding views of the Hudson Valley. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of sharp-eyed intensity that suggested she'd earned her reputation through competence rather than connections. Your case is more complex than most, she said, spreading documents across her conference table. Your wife has been planning this divorce for at least 2 years, possibly longer. How can you tell? The financial moves are too sophisticated for spontaneous decisions. Someone coached her through asset protection strategies that require long-term implementation. She showed me bank records I'd never seen before. Accounts opened in Mara's maiden name, investment portfolios transferred to trusts controlled by her parents, retirement funds moved to institutions outside New York's community property jurisdiction. She's been systematically removing assets from your marriage while maintaining the appearance of normal financial cooperation, Catherine continued. It's elegant, thorough, and completely unethical. What's our recourse? Forensic accounting, asset recovery, and civil fraud charges, if we can prove deliberate deception. But first, we need to understand who helped her design this strategy. The answer came from Janet Morrison's latest report. She'd traced the Portland apartment's lease to a property management company owned by Damon's business partner, a man named Vincent Torino, who specialized in discrete real estate transactions for high-net-worth individuals. Torino has handled similar arrangements for 3 other couples, Janet explained over lunch. Wealthy spouses preparing for divorce, creating safe houses and financial bolt holes before filing papers. So this is a business? It's a service. Torino provides the real estate, Damon provides the emotional support, and together they help unhappy spouses transition from marriage to independence. With a percentage of the assets as payment? Exactly. Your wife isn't just having an affair. She's a client in a divorce preparation service that specializes in asset stripping. The revelation transformed everything. Mara wasn't a cheating wife. She was a mark in an elaborate con game. Damon wasn't her lover. He was her handler, managing her emotional state while his partner managed her finances. How many others? I asked. That we can prove? 6 over the past 3 years. Total asset transfer estimated at $2.3 million. I sat back in my chair, processing the scope of the operation. They're professional. Very. And your brother Grant has referred 2 of the other victims. The pieces clicked into place with mechanical precision. Grant's job in commercial development provided access to wealthy, unhappy spouses. He identified targets, made introductions, and collected referral fees while families dissolved around him. "We need to warn the other victims," I said. "We need to document everything first. If we move too fast, they'll destroy evidence and disappear." That afternoon, I drove past Damon's office on State Street. His BMW sat in the parking lot, vanity plates gleaming in the autumn sunlight. I thought about the other husbands who'd sat where I was sitting, watching their marriages evaporate while strangers profited from their pain. The anger was clean and focused now, stripped of self-doubt and confusion. I wasn't losing my wife to another man. I was being robbed by professionals who'd turned divorce into a business model. My phone rang. Emery's number. "Dad, what's going on? Mom called me crying about lawyers and bank accounts. Your mother and I are getting divorced, sweetheart. I'm sorry you had to find out this way." "But why? What happened?" I considered several answers, each one true but incomplete. We grew apart. Sometimes that happens even to people who love each other. "She says you're being cruel, that you've changed." "I have changed. I had to." "Can't you work it out? Go to counseling or something?" "Some things can't be fixed, Em. They can only be replaced." She was quiet for a moment, processing information no 20-year-old should have to handle. "Will you be okay?" "I'll be fine. Better than fine, actually." "What about Mom?" "Your mother is resourceful. She'll figure something out." After we hung up, I sat in my truck and watched Damon's office building. At 4:30, he emerged with a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, well-dressed, wearing the kind of jewelry that suggested significant disposable income. They walked to lunch together, his hand resting on her lower back in a gesture I'd seen him use with Mara. Another client, I realized. Another marriage being prepared for strategic dissolution. I followed them to Riverside Bistro, where Cedric seated them at table 8. Not table 12, that was reserved for more advanced cases, couples ready for anniversary celebrations and romantic gestures. Table 8 was for initial consultations, business meetings disguised as social encounters. Cedric spotted me in the parking lot and came outside during his break. "You're watching him," he said. It wasn't a question. "Learning his patterns." "There's something you should know. The woman he's with? That's Patricia Hendricks. Her husband owns the Toyota dealership on Route 9. "How long have they been meeting?" 3 weeks, same schedule as when he started with Mara. Lunch twice a week, dinner on Sundays when the husband works inventory. "Does the husband know?" "Not yet, but he will eventually. They always find out too late to do anything about it." I thanked Cedric and drove home to find Mara packing suitcases in our bedroom. She moved with efficient purpose, folding clothes and organizing toiletries, like someone executing a well-rehearsed plan. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Portland. I need space to think." "Of course you do. How long will you be gone?" "I don't know. Until we figure out how to handle this situation." "The situation is handled. You're getting divorced. The only question is how much it's going to cost you." She stopped packing and turned to face me. "What do you mean, cost me?" "I mean your boyfriend and his business partner have been running a con game, and you're not the beneficiary. You're the mark." Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? How much money have you moved into accounts Damon helped you open? How many financial decisions have you made based on his advice?" "He was helping me protect our assets." "He was helping himself to our assets. There's a difference." I showed her Janet's photographs of the other victims, women who'd followed the same script Mara was reading. Initial attraction, gradual financial separation, strategic asset placement, and eventual divorce with significantly reduced settlements. Vincent Torino's property management company has handled 6 similar cases, I continued. Your lover isn't unique, Mara. He's a professional. She sat heavily on our bed, suitcase forgotten. You're lying. I'm documenting. There's a difference. Even if that were true, it doesn't change anything between us. You're right. It makes everything worse. You didn't just cheat on me. You paid someone to help you do it. She resumed packing with mechanical movements, no longer meeting my eyes. I'll be at the Portland apartment if you need to reach me. I won't need to reach you. My lawyer will handle all future communication. She left that evening with 2 suitcases and 24 years of marriage reduced to legal paperwork. I watched her drive away, tail lights disappearing around the corner like the end of a movie I'd stopped enjoying long ago. The house felt different in her absence, not empty, but clean, purged of deception and pretense, restored to something resembling honesty. I called Catherine Walsh and left a message. She's gone to Portland. Now we can move to the next phase. Then I opened a beer and sat in my garage, surrounded by tools and spare parts and the machinery of repair. Some things could be fixed, I reflected. Others needed to be completely rebuilt. Tomorrow, I would start rebuilding. 3 weeks after Mara's departure, Janet Morrison called with news that changed everything. I found the source, she said without preamble. The person who's been coordinating this operation isn't Damon or Vincent Torino. Who is it? Someone much closer to home. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? The drive to Albany passed in a blur of speculation. I'd assumed Damon was the architect of Mara's seduction, but Janet's tone suggested a more complex conspiracy. By the time I reached her building, my mind had cycled through every possibility except the correct one. It's your brother, Janet said, spreading photographs across her desk. Grant isn't just a referral source, he's the mastermind. The evidence was comprehensive and damning. Bank records showed payments from Vincent Torino's company to Grant's consulting firm. Email correspondence revealed detailed planning sessions for each target couple. Phone logs documented hundreds of calls between Grant and the various players in what was clearly an organized operation. He identifies the targets through his work in commercial development, Janet explained. Wealthy couples with marital problems, significant assets, and enough social connection to provide credibility. How does he identify marital problems? He creates them. Look at this. She showed me a series of text messages between Grant and Mara, dating back 3 years. He'd been feeding her doubts about our marriage, suggesting she deserved better, planting seeds of dissatisfaction that would eventually bloom into infidelity. Your brother has been manipulating your wife since before she met Damon, Janet continued. He's been preparing her psychologically for divorce while simultaneously positioning himself as her trusted advisor. But why? What does he get out of it? 20% of all assets transferred, plus consulting fees for divorce strategy. Your marriage alone has generated about $80,000 in revenue for his operation. I studied the documents, trying to reconcile this information with the brother I'd known for 46 years. Grant had been my best man, Emery's favorite uncle, the family member I'd trusted above all others. There's more, Janet said. He's been documenting your personal life for over 2 years. Financial records, work schedules, travel patterns, even photographs of you at the shop. Surveillance? Intelligence gathering. He needed to understand your vulnerabilities to exploit them effectively. She showed me a file labeled Silas Target Profile that contained intimate details of my daily routine, personality traits, and potential responses to various scenarios. It read like a psychological evaluation prepared by someone who knew me better than I knew myself. He predicted your reaction to the affair, Janet continued. The private investigator, the financial moves, even your choice of divorce attorney. He's been 3 steps ahead of you from the beginning. How is that possible? Because he's your brother. He knows how you think, how you react under pressure, what buttons to push to get specific responses. The scope of the betrayal was breathtaking. Grant hadn't just introduced Mara to her lover. He'd orchestrated our entire divorce, manipulating both sides to maximize profit while destroying his own family. What about the other victims? Same pattern. He identifies couples with assets and marital stress, then systematically destroys their relationships while positioning himself as a helpful advisor to the spouse with the most money. How many families has he destroyed? 8 that we can prove. Probably more that we haven't discovered yet. I sat in Janet's office, processing the magnitude of my brother's betrayal. Every family dinner, every holiday celebration, every moment of shared history had been contaminated by his secret agenda. He'd been studying me, cataloging my weaknesses, preparing for the day when my marriage would become profitable. What's our legal recourse? Extensive. Fraud, conspiracy, racketeering if we can prove the operation crosses state lines, plus civil suits for damages and emotional distress. What about Mara? She's a victim too, legally speaking. Your brother manipulated her into making decisions that weren't in her best interest. We can probably recover most of the transferred assets. I thought about Mara in Portland, believing she'd found love and independence when she'd actually found exploitation and manipulation. Despite everything, I felt sorry for her. There's one more thing, Janet said. Grant has been planning to eliminate you entirely. What does that mean? She showed me emails discussing Phase 3 of the operation, which involved framing me for financial crimes that would result in criminal charges and complete asset forfeiture. He's been planting evidence of embezzlement at your shop, she explained. Fake invoices, altered bank records, forged signatures. If this had proceeded according to plan, you'd be facing federal charges within 6 months. The room felt cold, despite the afternoon sunlight streaming through Janet's windows. My brother hadn't just been stealing my assets, he'd been preparing to destroy my freedom. How do we stop him? We turn the tables, use his own methods against him. Janet's plan was elegant in its simplicity. We would feed Grant false information about my intentions, making him believe his operation was succeeding while we gathered evidence for criminal prosecution. Meanwhile, we'd warn the other victims and coordinate with federal authorities to build a racketeering case. He's expecting you to react emotionally, Janet explained. Angry confrontations, impulsive decisions, self-destructive behavior. Instead, we're going to be methodical, patient, and completely ruthless. How long will this take? 3 months, maybe 4. Long enough to document everything and coordinate with law enforcement. I drove home through the gathering dusk, my mind reeling with implications. Grant's betrayal cut deeper than Mara's because it was more calculating, more complete. She'd been seduced and manipulated. He'd been the manipulator, turning family bonds into profit margins. That evening, I called him from my garage. Silas, he said, and his voice carried false warmth that I now recognized as performance. How are you holding up? Badly. This divorce is destroying me. I'm sorry, brother. I know this is difficult. Mara's lawyers are demanding everything, the house, the shop, even my retirement accounts. That seems excessive. They have evidence of financial misconduct. Apparently, I've been hiding assets and manipulating records. Silence stretched between us, and I could almost hear Grant calculating possibilities. What kind of evidence? He finally asked. Invoices that don't match my records, bank deposits I don't remember making. It's like someone's been setting me up. That's terrible. Have you hired a good attorney? I can't afford one. The legal fees are already bankrupting me. Maybe I can help. I know some people, have some connections. Would you? I'm desperate, Grant. I don't know what else to do. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness and thought about the brother I'd lost and the stranger I'd discovered. Tomorrow, I would begin the process of destroying the man who'd destroyed my family. But tonight, I mourned the relationship that had died long before I'd realized it was over. Grant's response to my fabricated crisis came within 24 hours. He arrived at my shop with coffee and sympathy, playing the concerned brother with Oscar-worthy conviction. I've been thinking about your situation, he said, settling into the client chair beside my desk. There might be a way to protect some of your assets. How? offshore accounts, shell companies, trusts established in favorable jurisdictions. It's complex, but I know people who specialize in this kind of protection. I leaned forward with desperate interest. Is it legal? It's creative. The important thing is preserving what you've worked so hard to build. He outlined a strategy that would have resulted in federal charges for money laundering, tax evasion, and fraud. Every suggestion was designed to deepen my legal jeopardy while giving him access to my remaining assets. This sounds expensive, I said. My friend Vincent handles the financial arrangements. He only charges a percentage of what he saves you. Vincent Torino, the same man who'd been managing Mara's asset transfers. Grant was so confident in his manipulation that he was using identical methods on both sides of my divorce. When can we start? Today, if you're ready. Vincent is expecting your call. I took the business card he offered, noting the Portland area code. He's in Oregon? He works with clients nationwide. Geographic diversification is part of the strategy. After Grant left, I called Catherine Walsh and reported the conversation. She was recording everything now, building a federal case that would eventually encompass 8 families and millions in fraudulent transfers. He's accelerating the timeline, she observed. Something has him worried. What do you think it is? Probably the other victims. We've been contacting them, and word travels fast in social circles. He knows his operation is compromised. That afternoon, I drove to Vincent Torino's local office, a modest suite in a strip mall that specialized in financial services for small businesses. Janet Morrison was already there, posing as my accountant and wearing recording equipment that would capture every word. Torino was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of smooth confidence that suggested extensive experience in separating people from their money. He spoke in financial jargon and legal technicalities, making criminal activity sound like sophisticated planning. Your brother has explained your situation, he began. Asset protection in high-conflict divorce requires aggressive strategies. How aggressive? We'll establish a series of trusts in Nevada and Delaware, then transfer your business assets to holding companies in jurisdictions that don't recognize New York divorce decrees. Is that legal? It's complex. The important thing is protecting your livelihood from an unreasonable settlement. He showed me documents that would have transferred ownership of my shop to a shell company controlled by Grant's consulting firm. The paperwork was professionally prepared, complete with official seals and notarized signatures. What's your fee? I asked. 15% of preserved assets, plus administrative costs. Given the complexity of your case, we estimate total fees around $45,000. I pretended to consider his proposal, while Janet took notes and recorded everything. Finally, I shook my head. It's too risky. If I get caught, I could go to prison. The risk is minimal if you follow our guidance exactly. I need to think about it. Torino's expression shifted from professional courtesy to mild irritation. Your brother indicated you were ready to proceed immediately. My brother doesn't understand the legal implications. This is my decision. We left without signing anything, but with enough recorded evidence to support conspiracy charges. In the parking lot, Janet was practically vibrating with excitement. We have them, she said. Conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, racketeering, the whole package. What happens next? We coordinate with the FBI and prepare arrest warrants. This operation is finished. That evening, I called Mara in Portland. She sounded tired, defeated, like someone who'd realized her dreams were actually nightmares. How are you? I asked. Confused. Nothing here is what I expected. What do you mean? Damon isn't. He's not the man I thought he was. And the financial arrangements are more complicated than anyone explained. Complicated how? I can't access most of the money I transferred. Vincent says it's tied up in legal structures, but I don't understand the paperwork. Of course, she couldn't access it. The money was gone, transferred to accounts controlled by Grant's operation. She'd been robbed as thoroughly as I had, just more subtly. Mara, I need to tell you something important. About Grant, about Damon, about everything that's been happening. I explained the conspiracy, the other victims, the systematic manipulation that had destroyed our marriage for profit. She listened without interruption, and I could hear her world collapsing in real time. You're saying I was manipulated into having an affair? I'm saying we were both manipulated. Grant has been planning this for years. But the problems in our marriage were real. The distance, the growing apart, that wasn't manufactured. No, but it was exploited. Grant identified genuine issues and amplified them until they became insurmountable. She was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now we stop them from doing this to anyone else. What about us? I don't know. We'll have to figure that out after we deal with the people who tried to destroy us. 3 days later, FBI agents arrested Grant at his office, Vincent Torino at his strip mall suite, and Damon at his real estate agency. The charges included conspiracy, fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. The local newspaper covered the story with headlines about a divorce mill that had operated for 3 years. I watched Grant's arrest from across the street, feeling nothing resembling satisfaction. Justice was necessary, but it couldn't restore the relationships that had been poisoned by his betrayal. Mara returned from Portland that afternoon, driving up to our house like someone returning from a long illness. We sat in our kitchen, the same table where I'd waited with champagne and divorce papers, and tried to understand what remained of our marriage. I don't know if we can fix this, she said. Neither do I. But I'd like to try. So would I. It wasn't a happy ending, because there were no happy endings to stories like ours. But it was a beginning, and sometimes that's enough. Outside, autumn was giving way to winter, and the trees along our street stood bare against the gray sky. Inside, we sat together in the ruins of our old life, trying to imagine what we might build from what remained. The champagne was still in our refrigerator, unopened, waiting for an occasion worth celebrating. Maybe someday we'd find one.